Are you out there?
Good afternoon and welcome to the Senate Committee on Government Operations meeting on Friday, April 3rd. We have one item up for consideration, and we're joined by members of the Vermont Agency of Commerce and Community Development and Council on Rural Development. And we have Gary Holloway and Jessica Savage. So if you want to come up together.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Move over?
Yeah.
One way or the other? Okay, I'll use this one. I'll use this
There
one.
you go. Thanks.
So welcome and
Thank you. Let me just get on here and I'll share my screen and
great. Yeah.
introduce myself.
Yeah, there you go.
One. Great. Well, thanks for having us on a Friday afternoon.
You're welcome.
My name is Gary Holloway. I'm the Downtown Program Manager with Department of Housing and Community Development. And today I'm presenting with, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Jess Savage. I'm the Director of Programs and Strategic Initiatives at the Vermont Council on Rural Development.
So today I'm here to speak on the Vermont evaluation for rural technical assistance. And I do have a few handouts if you want to maybe I can take one of those. The first one is a short sheet of a list of some of the recommendations that came out of the study. The other one is a 17-page kind of condensed report from the steering committee and from the HCD that really condensed down the longer report. It's like 100 and some odd pages that we collaborated on with UVM and the Center for Rural Studies. I did send a link if you want to digest the larger report or have access to this report on that link that I sent you all. So the Vermont evaluation of rural technical assistance is what I'm here to talk about today. And yeah, I should ask that before I get started. How's our time? How tight do we need to?
Half hour,
Okay,
40 minutes.
yeah, that's fine.
You're it.
Okay, great. And we'll just, we can go through this and we'll have, plenty of time for questions then. That sounds great. So, for those who may not be aware, the Vermont evaluation of rural technical assistance was in Act 181. So we were charged with really evaluating how we're serving municipalities, in particular, how the system can be strengthened and build on what we already have, particularly as we look at housing and infrastructure, climate resiliency, economic development. So through that lens, it's kind of where we started. So the purpose was to, once again, assess the system, identify the challenges, barriers, and gaps, and to come up with practical solutions to strengthen what's already existing or to create new ways of communicating or providing resources, particularly to municipalities was focused.
And may I just clarify?
Yes.
Yeah.
Technical assistance included everything from advice and counsel to sharing equipment to
Yeah.
in
Correct.
disasters. I mean, it was a whole broad range.
Absolutely. Figuring out ways that municipalities may be able to work collaboratively together, in times of disaster or in times of need and sharing equipment, to having, I'll go through it. I'll go through
Okay.
some of it. Yeah, but absolutely. So last year, this was all over the course of 2025. We formed a steering committee that you can see here, made up of the usual suspects that you can see here. There are others as well that participated in different ways, either through surveys or through focus groups. And this group met monthly to kind of make sure that we stayed focused on what the task was. So as we know, the challenge at hand is that there's, municipalities, particularly our smaller rural communities, don't have a lot of staff. There are limited volunteer hours if run planning commissions or select boards. And there's always kind of a constant rotation of volunteers into those positions and retraining. And so, for what the findings of the report, recognize that complexity of the system itself and the challenge just sometimes accessing the resources, or knowing where to go to get the grant that they need. Sometimes we get a call at the Department of Housing and Development because they know us. But sometimes it's relational based, but that person goes away, and then who do I call to get that assistance? There's a gap there that was identified through the study. The approach to the study was really ensuring that Vermonters had an opportunity to to kind of weigh in and provide their opinions and their thoughts from their experience. So there was listening sessions that were set up regionally around the state with the support of the regional planning commissions to ensure that different representatives from towns were there and could hear their voices. There was some in-person, there was some virtual listening sessions. There were surveys that were sent out and collected over 195 responses. Through the Center for Rural Studies, they had some students who really did a deep dive look analysis at a number of different states and how their systems are structured from a state level to partners throughout the whole system. We interviewed several states over the phone. We talked about visiting, but due to the tight, compact schedule that we had, we did virtual calls with Massachusetts, with Maine, and Michigan, and some other states, Alabama, to try to understand better how they're addressing these complex issues in rural states. And then we had a really successful statewide summit.
You did. It was rocking.
And it was a fun, Rebecca Sanborn Stone from the community workshop is
Constituent from Bethel. You're such a star. I mean, she's really so good.
She's amazing. She really helped the steering committee stay focused as a neutral party. And she helped us organize this event, and we actually had a game show. And we were participants in the game show at the event, and we broke off into different groups that really were able to kind of focus on specific areas of the high-level recommendations that we found in the report, and we're able to come up with some really creative ideas on how we might be able to address some of the challenges and barriers. That information too, and some of the photos from those poster boards that we did is available in the larger report. So I encourage you to take a look at that for other ideas on how we might be able to low action, medium to higher priority. But the findings were consistent across the regions that technical assistance is fragmented. It's hard for small towns to navigate, where to go, as I mentioned. And oftentimes they're short-term and project specific. So we have a particular grant, say, that a community gets, and there's assistance, during that period of time when they're having, getting the funding, but then that goes away. And then how do they have that continued level of support that they may need, or build that support internally, and locally to be more sustainable. So they need people. We all do at different levels need additional resources, people to kind of actually move the dial on some of these. So with a summary of the research findings, capacity was time and time again is the binding constraint. Administrative burden blocks, like unintentionally. Sometimes at a state level, we design programs thinking that this is the best way to do it, and sometimes we need to step back and ask ourselves, is this the best way? We recently looked at, I oversee downtown transportation grant, for example, and we've looked at that program as staff saying, what are the statutory requirements? What's the information we actually need to collect to make an accurate decision to fund projects or not? And let's remove some of the things that maybe we don't need to have in our application processes. So things like that. Coordination amongst agencies or amongst partners, sometimes that's fragmented. And the program design is important. And then obviously the evidence that we saw from other states points to coordinated solutions. And that's not a surprise, but it takes a lot of work to coordinate amongst partners. There has to be a willingness for different agencies to cooperate or for different partners to cooperate. So at a very high level, we identified 4 actionable priority areas. And I'm going to touch on each of these. Increasing state agency participation in solving local challenges, municipal and regional shared service tools, local engagement and leadership development, and increasing local capacity and questions resources. On that one pager that I gave you, you'll see kind of sub ideas that came out under each one of those. I didn't build my slide deck to kind of touch on each of those, but what I'm going to do is kind of touch on kind of, each grouping and kind of talk a little bit about some ideas that came out of that. So increasing state agency participation in solving local challenges. Some of the ideas that we looked at were, what do we already have in place that's working well? We know we have Vermont Council on Rural Development that has community visits, where they do facilitated conversations with communities to help them identify their priorities. And then there's some wraparound service with that, right? Trying to follow through to make sure that those local volunteer groups have, what they need to succeed with where they've identified. It was identified that perhaps maybe a centralized hub of information would be helpful, whether that be the resources and funding itself, or just someone to answer the phone, right? Quite frankly, to say, how can we help you? What are your challenges? We'll get you to the place you need to go. Question wise, where does that lie? Does that lie at state government? Does that lie in regional structure? Does it lie embedded temporarily in communities through fellows or through some kind of a way like that, or a combination of all of that?
So,
Yeah.
so Gary, I'm
Yeah.
just noticing kind of for the first time.
Yeah.
That Vermont Emergency Management wasn't part of your core group.
We did
And
have,
I know there were reps to Vermont Emergency Management from this group of people.
Yeah.
But, did Eric not participate in this?
we had invited, we had invited them to the table, and I think Pat Moulton sat on the committee, and she kind of is a crossover between not really emergency management, response to kind of the flooding, and those kind of responses we have in the state. But we're certainly not being exclusive of having representation on emergency management. And I think there's probably other, we could have probably had education on there. We could have had, human services. So we could have widened it, to your point, to be on the steering committee, but I think that's kind of where we landed from our invites. And
It is what it is.
yeah, but point taken. Priority to municipal and regional shared service tools. We know that communities oftentimes are trying to do things on their own, thinking they need to reinvent the wheel. Are there ways and structures that communities could approach things by borrowing ideas from either other states or other communities nearby? Maybe there's a way that they can come up with legal agreements to share equipment with each other, where each municipality maybe doesn't have to have the same duplicate, same equipment across town lines, and be able to share that. Maybe they can have contractors on retainer for different things. We learned that out of the flooding. It would have been nice for engineers to be on retainage, right? To kind of just quickly start to act on, what needs to get done to rebuild the bridges, right? Vermont League of Cities and Towns has great resources and tools and templates, but we were hearing that there was perhaps some additional things that could be that are needed, or maybe strengthened upon. So, can we work at shared service tools to help? So people aren't reinventing things each time. You have another set of volunteers; they know where to go. There's a hub of that information. Priority phrase: local engagement and leadership development. So, as a small state, we rely heavily on our volunteers, and we know that there's volunteer burnout and turnover. So how can we, recognize that, but also put some systems in place to help kind of better strengthen that leadership development pipeline. And I think, once again, organizations like Vermont Council on Rural Development, through their leadership efforts to try to build a pipeline of younger, more involved citizens, like that's a great way to kind of start to replace volunteers that maybe are retiring or moving on. So once again, looking at systems that we already have, not creating new things, but strengthening the areas that we can improve, and providing that education, the training. We do this already, but it's like, trying to really listen to the communities and understand what their needs are, and if we can have additional opportunities for them to learn. And then the other big priority area was increasing local capacity and flexible resources. Once again, there's that word capacity. We feel it at every level, from the state to our nonprofit organizations to our municipal leaders. So, how can we better increase that capacity, or listen to each other in terms of like understanding what the challenges are? We had a funders collaborative that met for about 10 years that really was designed to kind of bring funders, philanthropic, private, and federal partners together. Instead of at ribbon cuttings, we're doing it proactively. They kind of talk about challenges that are, that are being faced. Maybe it's the closure of a college in a community. Maybe it's a community that's trying to build a wastewater system. And we can have these efforts to come together and have conversations about how to address challenge in the community without even having the community maybe even in the room. And then inviting them into the room once we've been able to strategize a little bit, how to direct it and have a bigger impact with our funding. So that's just like one example of how we might be able to support, local capacity by kind of helping them think a little bit through problems. And then once again, existing programs like READY, the Rural Economic Development Initiative, is that right?
Yeah.
Sometimes my acronyms space me, but helping write grants and get access to additional funding. Do we need to, put additional resources there? The MTAP program, the Municipal Technical Assistance Program, does that need to be kind of thought out and reimagined and implemented in a way that can be helpful to support community? So once again, I think we've done a lot of this work over the years, and it's not all new, but we need to kind of look at what has worked well and how we can best, move the dial on some of these areas. So just a couple more slides, and then I'll pass it over to Jess, who can pick up and continue the conversation here. But the recommendation: coordinate together and improve among state government, the partners. I think we need to kind of better communicate with each other and understanding where our strengths are and where our weaknesses are. We want to reduce administrative burdens on municipalities. We want to expand capacity where we can. And quite frankly, promote equitable access so folks even know where to begin. Like, we need to make it easier for folks to access what they need. And then better align public-private philanthropic investments.
Mr. Chair.
So there's one. Yeah.
I really like both too, just so you know.
Just prior to your issue, you just trying to
Reduce administration burden on municipalities.
Mhm.
I'm not seeing that occur. I'm seeing more and more and more lump onto the local municipality, especially if you have a water, wastewater, street department, fire departments, everything. Yeah. How do you plan on doing that?
we don't, these are recommendations, and this is kind of what the work that lies ahead.
For us to work on,
For us to work on together.
we keep adding more.
Well, these are problems we need to solve. And figure out how to do a better job.
Yeah, so I was just curious, when you go around talking to these municipalities,
Yeah.
that's obviously, in my opinion, something you're hearing.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, maybe asking them.
Well, I can partially respond to that, right? I think, we do have a level of duplication of services from town to town to town. And I'm not suggesting,
Why we've looked at regionalizing.
yeah, I was going to say, I'm not suggesting, we can look at how the best accomplish that. But I think, there are some examples of other states that are certain things that can be done. Can the bookkeeping be done by one person for 3 towns and not have a bookkeeper? Like, is there a way that we can kind of, just maximize who we have and better, anyway, I don't know if I'm articulating it very well, but it would reduce maybe how much resources and funding they're putting into a particular thing. There might be some savings by trying to kind of share some of those services amongst different towns, for example.
Okay, I envision that meaning something different. Gotcha.
But what you're saying is that, are you saying that there's more like state requirements?
Oh, absolutely.
Put on the municipality, and then another level of federal requirements put on top of that? Yeah. And that's to my point earlier, and I think it's our role coming out of these recommendations as agencies is to kind of really take a look at program to program, like where do we have unnecessary requirements? What's required by federal law? What's required by state statute? What's the information we need just so we can make good sound judgment? And then what is the other area that maybe is fluff that we could, not have as a requirement and lower the burden?
So as an example, Senator Clarkson, you know how we look at all of our reports and say, all right, we no longer need to do this because it's really not functional or no one's really looking at it and doing it. I wish that someone would offer to the municipalities, Because I'm not sure all the information that we provide and everything that we do is being looked at by the agencies of state government.
If we're not looking at them, they're not.
I'm just saying,
No.
because we provide a lot of information.
But also, as we have reduced capacity, we've reduced capacity in state government too, which is what we found.
This is, I'm sorry, we're way off topic.
Well, which is
Okay.
part of the big problem with the floods of 2023 is we didn't have, we had cut since 2011 in Tropical Storm Irene, we cut staff at ANR, big cut. And we didn't have the response ready for many of our municipalities. We were really behind the eight ball.
Because there's less
Because
and
we
less
cut
money
off-
in the state government. They require more and more on the municipality. So there's a cost shift.
There is a huge cost shift
That's,
going down towards,
yeah,
and we do it across the board.
yes, I agree with you.
You know, we unhoused a bunch of people and who's picking up the cost for that? The municipalities, like there's huge cost shifts. Because the need doesn't go away. We just
It's the local.
ask someone else to pay for it
Well, the same people are paying for it, just.
in a different way.
But
We're
I-
way off track, sorry.
I think, well, yeah, I don't-
I was listening. I think ANR has more employees now than they've ever had.
Oh,
No, I would think that the secretary would disagree with you.
Okay.
I did just want to mention, to your point, it's not off topic. So there are two big buckets of recommendations, which have two things I think that are relevant to this. They are some bigger long-term challenges, as we're noting, this is a challenge, right? One is around asking state agencies to work together on things like what would a shared grant application look like? What would it look like for the state to bring together all of its grant administrators to ask that question at kind of the big level?
Yeah.
What's required? What is like unnecessary? What could we do to trim those requirements? And then the other one, something we heard loud and clear, especially at the summit, was around planning requirements. So again, these aren't like quick fixes or low hanging fruit challenges, but they are ones that there are some ideas in the report around.
Which, you know, we could have one grant application for anything in state government. You could easily adapt it for what they're applying for. One of the biggest challenges, as you know, is applying for grants.
oh yeah, absolutely.
It's huge.
And so another topic, like for our electric utilities, we're starting to team up with like Orleans Electric, Fire Electric, Linden Electric, and asking the state of Vermont whether or not we can offer to the state one integrated resource plan, which is a requirement every 3 years, instead of 3 separate ones, which is tying up the Department of Public Service, is tying up the local utilities, is tying up VEPSA, is tying up everybody. And so I'm just trying to think of things like that where I could start.
And I think that's what this is getting at, that the whole point is let's align things to make it simpler for municipalities to actually access things. Let's actually figure out a way to improve communication. So municipalities, our towns know what's actually there, what resources are there for them and how to access them.
You know, an example, you know, could be, I'll just go to like in New York, the state government actually has an office set up. They're not running programs, like we're all running programs, right? We're all running different things. But there's an office that basically is that hub that you go to one place for information and for, you know, to know, and they
I
can
mean,
kind of direct
information kiosk.
and it can direct you to, it's kind of like the, you know, the phone lines and direct you to the other, you know. So, you know, having that, I'm oversimplifying it, but basically having a place, that's the job, that's the role, that's obviously a much larger undertaking to kind of come up with that kind of structure, but that's as an example of like how you might be able to approach that, having a centralized place for information, and resources and assistance. So I'll finish off by saying, you know, the steering committee, you know, when their charge kind of has ended with the report in terms of its requirements for Act 21, but there's a real interest for the steering committee to continue meeting and try to really figure out how can we move the dial with some of these actions. Is there some low hanging fruit that we can work on over the next 6 to 12 months? Are there some larger goals that we're going to really take some thinking and some strategizing to come back next year and figure out how we can better, you know, accomplish these longer term, more, you know, systems change approach. But we want to try to keep that momentum. We need to build the bench. You know, this is a team sport.
Yeah.
And, we certainly, looking just at the names on that steering committee, that's not who's gonna get it all done. Like, we need to build the bench out and
No,
work collaboratively with you all, the legislature, with the administration, and with various partners and folks from the municipal, quite frankly, at the local level, be involved with some of those conversations so that we're
Well, they need to
making
be
these changes
delegated.
in reality,
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, this, articulates the needs. I think what you've done here is you've done a great job of pulling together what the needs are.
Yeah.
And now we need to go forward and figure out how we're gonna meet those needs.
That's
Who's gonna do the inventory of town equipment that could be shared?
Yeah.
Remember Becca, when we went and saw that great.
The Vector.
Yeah, that's what's it called?
Vector.
The Vector. So so Barry has a Vector. Well, no one else around Barry has a Vector. So how can we,
So that's
when
the,
Barry isn't using their Vector, how can it be? So we, I mean,
Original
one of the things I
Yeah.
would add here is an inventory of,
the inventory's been done
of.
by Department of Public Safety, I believe.
Oh, of all equipment?
Great, so. Who knew?
Well, then
I
also
didn't know
like to take that example of like having an inventory of equipment, when we had the floods of 2023, it didn't flood every town.
No,
And we had equipment, so knowing where those resources are to have agreements already in place so that towns in Addison County maybe that weren't affected or could help a town in Rutland County that was affected, so it can have that kind of effect, right?
So that's kind of already in place too, kind of under mutual aid and things of that nature, at least.
well, yes and no, but not outside your region. I mean, if you're having a problem,
Yeah, but then it goes to the
Lovers.
Public Safety and then they know where those resources are and then they start.
Maybe not. I don't
Maybe
know.
not.
We heard BEM last year. It felt like we were hearing a lot of,
Really?
or at
Yeah.
least maybe in the moment, some not connecting of the correct people with the right peoples. But BEM came in. What was that the gentleman who we see quite a bit in here?
Nicholas.
Yes, he comes in quite a bit and he has explained to us.
The mayor
that
of-
there's some.
Well, Nicholas is the mayor of Barry, was.
Oh,
the mayor of
oh,
Barry.
then-
The mayor of Barron, the manager.
He's the city manager.
Yeah.
Jake
Oh,
was
never
in there.
mind. I was thinking of
Yeah.
that.
You are thinking, I think Eric Ferran.
Eric Ferran was coming
Oh,
quite
yeah.
a bit.
Oh, he's the head of
He
the.
is-
That's what she asked,
Yeah.
who's the head of the
Yeah.
emergency management.
Okay, I was like, that is what I asked for. It sounds great too, but,
Yeah.
yeah, we have heard, so where have you gone as a municipality to?
I've had to go and fill out, through grants, through FEMA, through, I believe, the Department of Public Safety before, and they come through and ask for all the resources.
Oh,
For what do you have for dump trucks? What do you have for
Wow.
equipment? What do you have for, so you give this whole list and then they provide it to you with every single town and the equipment.
we had never, this is the
I
first,
have never
That is
heard that
great.
existed.
wow.
Did you know that existed?
No, and see, this is part of the challenge, right? It was
Law enforcement was even included in that.
Well, maybe the NEKs was more.
I mean, it's not in my bailiwick, to like say, like, I would be not, I would hope that the people that need to know that exists,
Mhm,
no?
mhm.
Yeah, well, it makes sense that it does kind of, sort of, must be, it's not very. Yeah.
Exchange. So yeah, that was actually my last slide.
So you want money to finish the work of
Well, I'm
really
gonna-
making recommendations.
I'm gonna hand it off
Jess.
to Jess, to discuss, that proposal.
Yes, yeah, well, thank you so much for taking time on a Friday afternoon after the mini trucks, which were fantastic.
They're still going on.
So I'm Jessica Savage, as I said, I work at VCRD. So for those of you who don't know us, and I think most of you do, we're an independent, nonpartisan nonprofit. We provide community-led facilitation, convening, leadership skill development, technical assistance, and on-demand support to Vermont rural communities. We convene statewide policy discussions on issues impacting rural Vermont and Vermonters at large. So I'm here to complement the testimony from Gary as one of the Verda Steering Committee members. I just want to say that we've been both deeply involved with this because this is what we do and have done for 30 years, but also just want to really appreciate that this was not just a cursory report. As somebody who worked in state government for 15 years, sometimes the report is just that. This was a serious undertaking and project, and I really want to thank PHCD and the Ladies Center for Rural Partnerships for doing way more than like just what was in the Act 181 charge. Everything Gary was talking about was really deep listening, effective engagement, making that summit fun. Those are all like fantastic ways to do good community engagement. And I say this as somebody who does or strives to do good community engagement every day. So I just want to really say thank you for doing that. And these recommendations really underscore how the state and its partners can address the needs of rural communities. The findings resonate with our experience working with rural towns. Towns need coordinated, simplified access to not just information, but navigation, flexible and patient funding, and support for all the phases of project development. They need us, Vermont's technical assistance provider network, to work well together, to talk to each other, and to have the time, staff, financial resources, and expertise to support them in their locally defined projects. So we're here to ask you, the legislature and this committee, to consider offering $500,000 in the FY27 budget to make good on what rural towns have told us they need. Our proposal is simple and allows for implementation of some of the most impactful recommendations in the report. So our ask would provide backbone and administrative support to design and implement a TA and funding program that directly benefits, especially our underserved rural towns and villages. It would provide technical assistance resources, so the staff consultant time to provide these custom resource teams for each community selected for the program. And the majority of the funding is direct support to towns. So what we heard loud and clear was that funding should be accessible and flexible. So it would be distributed through a grant application process where towns will work with its resource team to use grant funding to pay for services that will help them make meaningful progress on community-driven economic development goals. Projects could include housing, infrastructure, childcare facilities, climate resilience, and more. And while this sounds ambitious for a one-year proposal, this is based on work we're already doing. We're already working together around the table and have been familiar with MTAP, the Municipal Technical Assistance Program. It was an excellent pilot program. I was the person who administered that grant for us at VCRD, and it's been a fantastic resource. We always answer the phone. We're the forever friend of rural Vermont. But I was able to not just answer the phone, but show up with staff and money when communities had a need above and beyond our regular, say, community visit program, which right now has a 2-year wait list. It expedited our services, and we were one of many organizations that were able to provide that level of really responsive technical assistance. And so this funding has just ended for most of the technical assistance providers in December. And this proposal would allow us to build on that foundation while incorporating recommendations from the Verda report and the partners who are already at the table. So as we've even noticed today in your comments and questions, rural towns are being asked to do so much with decreasing federal funding and increasing complexity of the problems they face. And despite that, we know every day we get to see that there are dedicated local leaders who are ready and willing to show up for the towns they love, especially when given thoughtful support to make their local dreams come true.
Is the 500 in the governor's recommended budget?
It was not this year.
Okay.
It was last year's budget. They included $3 million for a 2-year ask to continue the MTAP program, but it didn't make it into the budget last year. This year we are in the House budget for $250,000.
So you're in the house budget.
We are.
For two.
Yes.
Any other questions for
No, we just.
Senator White?
Sorry for my late arrival, but I think Gary knows, and I hope you know, I really support VCRD. I support your work,
Yeah.
and I'm grateful for all that you've provided to small municipalities in particular. And VCRD, I mean, I even think it was a program through Efficiency Vermont, and VCRD is how I met Senator Morley, going up and working on efficiency projects in association with local government.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you're a really phenomenal connector as an organization. So even if it's not work you're doing, it seems like you're always involved in making those connections, and the same can be said for ACCD. So
Yeah.
just really grateful for your work, and I would be very supportive of including in our letter to, at the very least, have the House recommended budget 250 that you've asked for be continued. I would even go so far as say I'd be supportive of the full 500,000, but I don't know kind of where this committee stands on.
We'll talk.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, Senator Clark.
So, I'm hearing two things. One is you need to finish this work and you need to figure out how we're going to create this point of entry that really for, because the reason is the VLCT is sort of the point of entry for most towns for almost anything. So creating something through a VLCT as an info center would be great. But so you want to finish your work and you want to be able to have enough money to give out in grants and technical assistance. Is that right? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, yes. And I think of this funding as really being the most responsive answer directly to what communities said they needed. This wouldn't do everything in the report. Like I said, some of these ideas are really complex state agency, interagency work that needs to happen. But this funding would give towns exactly what they said they needed, which was a well-coordinated TA system, a team that is customized to what they're asking for, and flexible funding that they could use to make the next phase of their project happen. And the other thing I just want to say is that I think of this program as one that can be a cohort model as well. Something we've seen is that peer learning is really important between communities. Some of the work we did with MTAP was peer cohorts of village wastewater projects. Rebecca Sanborn Stone did some great work with that. We're doing that right now with our Village Trust Initiative, and we see that while each town is different, there are some core things that they're asking for. And again, we want to design the grant program with our partners, but I feel confident that we can do this because we've already been doing it for a long time. So, yeah.
Thank you both.
No, thanks for having us.
Yes, our pleasure.
It's such
Look
a.
what happened, the sun came out.
Yeah. So the money that we put into the property transfer tax and I thought had put save piece of it for technical assistance to keep the MTAP work going. Is that not money that we have available to ourselves? I'll find out.
I can't
Because I
speak to
think,
that.
Remember.
yeah, I thought we dedicated a piece of that property transfer tax to this, to technical assistance, but I need to remind myself. Sure.
As like a dedicated revenue source?
Yeah,
I thought that.
Goes to like 300 places, right?
Yeah.
it does, but I thought we added, increased.
Most of the ed funds, some of it.
Yeah.
This
Well,
is
most of it goes to
Right,
right,
the
from the
VHCV.
AFO.
Yeah.
Most of it goes to the VHCV.
Yeah.
But
A
no,
lot
we
of-
added some for technical assistance, after the summer of 23. Because this would be, this is an ongoing need. This is not, the support for the towns is an ongoing.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think of this program as a way to kind of bridge and allow the Verda Steering Committee to continue working on the longer term, bigger questions while being really responsive to what communities told us.
And if by some happy miracle, you got what had come over to us from the House and we were, how would you raise the additional 250,000 feet?
That's a good question. I think there's two options. One would be that we could reduce the number and size and potential geographic spread of the awards around the state. So we could see what would it look like to have a $250,000 budget, or VCRD is always fundraising for our work. That's what we do. We offer our services free of charge to communities. So that would be a good question for all of the partners around the table to answer. How could we find additional funds, or would we look at a reduced scale budget?
And my last question is, of the 252 towns that we have, I can remember now that Essex Junction, whether we're back at 51. But of them, what percent of them would you say are the most challenged, have the least? How many of them would you say really are the most challenged? Not you, you're the manager, so that town is not challenged.
So there, about 2/3 of our towns are less than 2,500 people, which is a pretty good.
It's not the number.
Yes. So let's talk about just that, maybe 2/3 of that. I would say an additional 2/3 have pretty mid to low capacity 1/3 are like very low capacity. The state did a really good job with an index for MTAP, where they kind of pre-approve some of these eligible
Right.
communities, based on a bunch of different factors. For us, is there a 3-person select board and a part-time town clerk, regardless of population, although there does.
That takes 3 times a week or something.
Yeah, yeah. If there's a 5-person select board, wow, and a full-time and a town administrator and a town clerk. So those are the kind of like breaking points we see.
Yeah, that's,
So
how many?
right.
So you would say a third of the 200, of the 2,300.
This is my estimate. I could definitely look at the index from MTAP and get back to you with that answer.
It's a significant number.
Oh, that,
A significant number, yeah. I mean, we've worked in about 100 towns around the state over 30 years, and a lot of them, many of them are very low capacity. And that's why they're asking for a community visit, because it brings energy, it cultivates new leadership and new ideas, and it brings, frankly, the spotlight of the state onto a small town. Where we bring a team from across the state to really pay attention to those needs. And you match that with that local oomph of leadership and big things happen, for sure.
And then most of us have had to, need you to come back and get us back on track.
Just wanted to thank you again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know we're between you and your weekend, so thank you.
Have a good weekend.
Thank
you.
Enjoy.
Yeah.
Happy Passover, happy Easter, happy everything.
Oh, and
We'll
Senator.
Find the Apicoma and the golden Easter egg.
I saw the Easter egg. Senator Collmore, we're going to be working in Brandon next for our community visit.
wonderful.
Let you know.
Nice.
Let me know when you're there.
Yes, April 30th is our.
Okay.
So you're gonna-
Keep an eye out for Alyssa Johnson or Lauren Brady to reach out to you. I'm Lauren Brady, and we'll reach out to you with the details for April 30th.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll probably still
I
be
see
here
what
unless
you
it's a
guys
weekend.
What? I don't know.
Next Monday for the committee.
It's Thursday evening.
Yeah.
You're gonna work your job.
And people from the ask.
We will probably have a
Yeah,
hybrid
see,
option. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
Zoom option we could do, but
great.
harder.
We'll keep.
Thank you for scheduling.
Oh,
If you want it, we're just gonna keep you informed. It should be interesting.
I mean, the Zoom option is.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Nice to see you again.
Sorry.
Oh, there's a cookies? Okay.
Nice to meet you.
You must be a running chair. I didn't-
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
he's so rich.
Yes.
I didn't mean.
You asked David Weeks, now I.
Okay, we're still on. Is there anything else to come before the committee?
Email them.
Okay, if not, we will adjourn for the week and see you all